Today I'm waiting for the Encore. My guest is CORY REINISCH. CORY is a lovable lad from Brady, Texas. He is frontman of one of Austin's most notable country outfits, the Harvest Thieves, and also works at one of the city's most historic music markets, Waterloo Records. He's a very warm and easygoing dude, so please enjoy my talk with CORY REINISCH. All right, CORY REINISCH in the house. Thank you for joining me, my friend. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm actually enjoying listening to a little bit of thunder outside. It's been so hot. It's cooling down a little bit, which is nice.
Yep, I'm getting a thunderstorm right now too. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want to spend any time talking about weather on this this podcast, but it's supposed to cool down real quick here. I'm sure you've noticed that.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I'm so excited. It's the best time the heat breaks. So CORY, I want to kind of just jump in with how things have been going for you since the lockdown started, kind of mid-March. Tell us what you've been doing since March and what you were planning on doing at that time, what you were involved with. I'm sure you had some South by stuff lined up with Harvest Thieves, but what were you planning? How did it all get destroyed? And how have you been, occupying yourself since that time?
Yeah, you are correct to your point. We were an official artist this year for South by Southwest. And so I think the total number of shows we had booked was around 7 or 8. And that was including our official showcase as well. But yeah, I mean, we took that news like everybody else did. It was a bit of disappointment, but I don't know. Looking back, it seems like maybe that was the right choice. But that's neither here nor there. We did lose out on the shows, and that was something we were looking forward to. And then we had several shows booked after that, a couple in town, couple out of town. Obviously, we weren't able to do those. So we've just kind of been in a holding pattern, sitting here waiting for life to return to some semblance of normalcy again. But we've been working on an album too, so we were able to get most of it done. We were hoping to release that this year, but I don't know that that's going to be the case now. We're kind of waiting to see when we can make that happen. But we're getting close. We just got some loose ends to tie up. And then that's really the next big thing for us on the horizon is rolling this album out. So.
And is it a EP? Is it LP, full length thing?
Yeah, it'll be a full length. We actually released the first single of it in December with the intention of getting it out in the spring or early summer. And that just kind of got derailed when all this went down. So we're just waiting for a better time, I guess. I've been really pleased to see some of my musician friends and some bands that I follow here in town. They've done releases during the pandemic. And for the most part, I think if you talk to them, they would share that it's gone very well for them, even considering the circumstances. But I think we're not really in a hurry. I mean, we've waited this long anyways, so we'd like to just wait till the time is right, I think. But I really admire those who put their work out during this. So.
Yeah, and you can always release a single or two, give the people a little taste of what they want, and release the full album later down the line. I've released a couple singles, and I'm happy with it. It's gone fine in terms of releasing a whole album during this. If your calendar and your preparation lines up for it, then sometimes you just got to pull the trigger. But of course, if you put an album, you kind of feed off the juice from that. From gigs for a while. So that's the unfortunate thing, of course, is you can't, juice that album when there's no gigs going on for the most part, but there's no telling how long this is going to last. So,
that is true. And that's something, we have to consider. So
yeah,
we don't want to wait too long, but
for sure.
Yeah.
How about you personally? How have you been, what have you been up to? Are you working a job? Are you staying at home working your crafts? What have you been up to yourself?
Yeah, so I work at Waterloo Records, which is an awesome job. It's been a great place to work. I've been there for over 3 years now. And they happened to have a store-wide furlough to let us all go and kind of come back intermittently and see how the business model was going to look during all this. So, we're back open again, but we're only doing curbside service. And so I've been able to keep my job, which is wonderful. There's so many people who are struggling without work right now. And for the most part, I think it's going well with the store. So that seems like a place of solid ground for me in life right now, which is nice. And then outside of that, man, I've just been trying to, force myself to pick up my guitar every day and stay in practice. And if the muse strikes, then to sit down and finish or write a song. So I'll be honest with you, I haven't written as much as I would have hoped during all this time. But in lieu of that, I was also able to take care of a lot of things that I've been wanting to do just personally for years now, and found the time and space to do that, which was really nice. And, sometimes that's what it takes when you're creating and writing. You just need to declutter your life. And I've certainly been able to do that. So
that's great. Yeah, I can say the same. It's definitely been a time to get to things you never really had time for before, or not nearly as much time. And I think declutter is a real good word. And that's always good for clarity of, clarity of inspiration, clarity of thought, all that stuff. Why don't you give us just a 1 or 2 minute, synopsis of what life is like at you work at what would be considered a super, unique and fantastic record store. And that's obviously something that a lot of people love. It's a culture in itself. And it's, how is that operationally going for Waterloo Records? How are you doing it?
Well, right now, we're working every day of the week. We're open Monday through Sunday, which is nice. The hours are a little adjusted. It's 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. But basically, you call in or get online and order records from us. We sell a lot of other things other than records too, but right now that's been the main source of business. And so he's the owner, John Coates, has really, facilitated this to kind of be a model of efficiency. So I think the most disappointing thing to our customers is that part of being in a record store is the ability to look around.
Yep, exactly.
And that's honestly, that's the biggest part about coming into a record store. So unfortunately, that's not available at the moment. However, if you do know what you want, and we live in a time now where technology affords us so many other opportunities, but you can browse our inventory online, and if we have it in stock, it's as easy as sending a payment and then coming and picking it up. So.
And you guys have been able to keep some business from that model.
We have. I mean,
Good.
Obviously, it's a pretty big reduction in business from normal times when people were able to come in. But for instance, we had Record Store Day this last weekend, and that presented a set of logistical obstacles for us to maintain and handle, but we did a really good job with it, and the store did exceptionally well that day, which is promising for us. And so I think Waterloo's a Austin institution, and the owner John, I think, is bound and determined to see the store through this strange time. So
well, that's good to hear. And wasn't there, prior to Corona, wasn't there a location change going on with you guys?
Yeah, so there was a real estate group who came in and bought basically that whole block.
Of course.
But that's Austin in its present sense. But they were kind to us. I think they were allowing us to piggyback over on the longest lease within that city block there. So whoever had the longest lease was kind of buying that time for everyone else around. And I haven't heard much about that since, but the plan was, even before the pandemic, to move the store to another location and continue business.
Mm-hmm. But you're still in that same location then?
Same location right now. Yeah.
Very cool. So why don't we go back a little bit and visit who little Cory was? Where do you come from? Tell us a little bit about your early musical influences, how you got started on guitar, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in a small town called Brady, Texas, right up the road. It's about 2 hours northwest of Austin. Real rural upbringing. Parents, both farming and ranching families. So agriculture was kind of the background setting to our family. But my family is a very musical family, and I was fortunate enough to have uncles and aunts, and even my mom and dad are musicians in their own right, share that talent and interest with me. So I was able to do that among many other things. My parents were very encouraging about picking up any self-interest as a child. So whether that was athletics or any kind of artful endeavor, I was encouraged to do that. So
When did you start
music
playing
stuff.
guitar?
I probably started playing guitar whenever I was 12 or 13 years old. My dad ended up being a drummer, but my grandmother had his old Silvertone guitar that she bought him when he was a kid.
Wow.
He never really picked it up, but she kept it in immaculate shape. And whenever I turned 13 or 14, maybe, she gave me that guitar, and I started messing around with it and really getting into it. But my interest in it ramped up pretty quickly, and I had some friends in my small hometown who played as well, and we all kind of helped teach each other. It was really neat that I was able to grow up with people who were like-minded in that way, and we were able to kind of feed our interests with each other. So.
And who were you listening to? Is it always the country stuff? Is that always what was on the mantelpiece?
Yeah, early it was always just kind of the background. I mean, my family, especially my uncles, my family dictated a lot of what I listened to, and a lot of it was traditional country, and a lot of it was Western swing. My uncles were really into Western swing music, so we're talking about Bob Wills and Hank Thompson and some of those old acts that you just don't hear people talk about too much anymore. But we listened to country music, mainstream country music on the radio all the time anyway. So of course I grew up with George Strait and Dwight Yoakam and Alan Jackson, and had all that stuff on in the background as well. And it always was an interest of mine. But growing up in high school, I was a rock and roll kid too, and a punk kid. So I was really into the Replacements when I was in high school. And then I got into the Nirvanas and the Pearl Jams and Soundgardens, like any kid my age did. But I always held the singer-songwriter up high in regard, and I have ever since I was a young kid. My dad introduced me to Dylan, so the hook got set early for me.
Very cool. And when did you start with, say, your first project? Did you put a band together in high school, or was it not until later? Yeah.
We did in high school. I actually played in a couple of bands in high school. Probably my junior, senior years when all that happened. But yeah, of course, in Brady, there was no real venues to play. It was usually just school functions or somebody's backyard, or we invited friends over to the garage and drank beers and put on our own shows that way. But yeah, we played pretty regularly. I mean, for a group of 5 or 6 kids from a small town in the middle of Texas.
Very cool. And then did you migrate down to Austin kind of right after high school, or did that come later? Was there somewhere in between?
Yeah, that came later, actually. I went to school, graduated in Brady and went to school up at Texas Tech in Lubbock, Texas. And so I stayed there, and I played in a band when I was up there, but I wouldn't call it a very serious endeavor. It was just more of a kind of having fun. We played a few bar gigs when I was up there. And looking back, I regret that, because Lubbock has such a rich musical history. And, even when I was there, some of the local bands, it's a place that's full of musical talent. And even with the guys I was playing with then in college, we always had a great time. We just didn't put a lot of effort into playing out and pursuing anything with any level of seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
but after that, I graduated undergrad and I stayed and I went to grad school and got my master's. And then I moved to Dallas right after I graduated grad school. I lived in Dallas for 2 or 3 years, didn't play much music at all, and couldn't stand it up there. So I moved with the specific intent of playing music when I got to Austin. So.
And how long ago was that? How long have you been here for?
I moved to Austin in February of 2007, so I've been here over a decade now.
Very cool. So I moved about 2011.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to a few people lately that moved kind of 2005. So you're right in between. And I always felt I moved at a really good time because it still had some of that old Austin feel, but the opportunities were flush during that time. You know, they just kept building new cool places. And I'm sure you were here before me, so you got even a bit more of a real good wave, you know, like it's still real funky, cool South by Austin. And then it just, all this stuff happened. And then it kind of, you know, it's kind of plateaued, and it's still a wonderful place, of course, but it's different. It's definitely different. Even from when I moved here just 10 years ago. So were you able to kind of plunge right into the scene and meet all kinds of people and start playing, or was it real uphill and slow going at first? How was it for you?
You know, I look back on it and think of myself as being pretty fortunate just with regards to how that started for me in Austin. I moved down here. I was doing radio advertising in Dallas and wanted to stay in radio advertising because I knew of the stations down here, and I ended up getting a job with what was then the MS Group, and that's KGSR, KLBJ AM and FM 101X, and then there was a really cool hip hop station called Hot 93 back then. And I got that job, and I look back on it and think how thankful I am that I had that, because I had youthful coworkers. We were connected to the music scene, and it was really just a great way to facilitate landing in Austin and not knowing anybody really, and kind of jumping in the water head first. That was a great job to help me facilitate putting a band together and meeting new people to play music with. So, you know, I was very fortunate in that way. I started playing almost immediately when I got here. Kind of hooked up with a few individuals who had like-minded pursuits in mind, and so we just immediately started practicing. And you know, it wasn't too long after we put the band together that we started playing some pretty cool venues, and we got really lucky in that regard. So everybody, you may feel this way about Austin, but from day one to now to here with you and I talking, Austin, the music scene is very supportive, and it's very communal, and I've found that to be the case throughout my entire experience living here. I think everybody, if they see you fighting and you're working hard, they appreciate it, and they're willing to do anything to help you out and cheer you on. And that's certainly been my experience, and it has been since day one. So
that's super. Yeah, who was I just talking to about this? I think it was either yesterday or the day before, but I had forgotten because I'm so used to it. But the striking, and maybe you got this in Brady, or something tells me you didn't get it in Dallas, but when I first moved here from Chicago, which is a Midwest, very nice place. A lot of people, most people are very nice in the Midwest. But as soon as I came here, it was a striking kindness, niceness of people in the city. And I always acknowledged it, but I had forgotten it until that whoever that was that said that. I was like, yeah, man, I remember moving here, and it was like, people are so nice. And I think that, of course, you know, bleeds into the music scene itself. And the music scene is, you know, it's everything. You're going to have really supportive people who are, you know, just ignoring you. It's everything. That's what the music business is. But I agree. There's a strong kindness in the lifeblood of the Austin music scene, and Austin in general.
I still believe that to be true. I hate to be that guy who didn't grow up here and talks about how much it's changed since I've moved here. But you said it earlier. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is it has changed. And, you know, there are parts of the city that are completely unrecognizable from when I first moved here. They've
A
been
lot of
complete.
parts, a lot of
Yeah,
parts of the city.
it's actually really insane. And when I first moved here, I lived down in South Austin, which you would call South Austin, I guess 78704, and lived there for years, and did so with, I mean, I wasn't rich by any means. I was doing okay at the radio station, but rent was cheap. You could have a job and have your passion on the side. And I did that for a long time. And then, it's just gotten to, I think the biggest change is just how much it costs to live here, and what that affects in life. I think the people are still nice here. I think there's a general air and an attitude that Austin has that is very unique from other towns, especially in Texas. And as long as that doesn't change, I think Austin is always a wonderful place to live and call home. But it is a different city. Absolutely.
Yeah, and as I'm talking here, I'm just going to change my internet source because sometimes, oops, not that one. Sorry. But sorry, give me 1 sec. This will make everything nice and good. Cool. Better. Yeah, and the thing is, like, cities are living things, man. Okay, like, and when you said a lot's like, it's when you stop and think about it, it's since 2010, I can honestly say 75% of the city is different in terms
Yeah.
of real estate and what it looks like. I mean, when you think about how much has been built, so for you, it's even more, but cities are living things. They have a natural path. If it's a cool ass city,
Mm-hmm.
there's no doubt more people are going to move there. More
Mm-hmm.
people with money are going to move there, and it's going to get expensive. That's
Mm-hmm.
the way it always goes. And then, of course, you see at this moment what's going on with Los Angeles and New York, which is, both places were thriving, really too expensive to live for most people, especially New York. LA, probably more accessible, even though it's super expensive. But I just keep hearing bad things about both those cities in the last 6 months. Just things are falling apart. So Austin just seems to have a real strong, even though it's expensive and it is changing a lot, it doesn't seem like that's possible in this city. It's just too much innovation, and it's not a behemoth like New York or LA so it's probably going to be thriving for a long time, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean that I feel silly saying this because I hope you understand where I'm coming from, but there are a lot of people who are hurting right now, especially who are out of work and wondering what the future looks like. But I'd say in general, this is a very overarching statement, but Austin, for some of the reasons you outlined, may be one of the cities in the country that's been hit, the least through all this. I mean, real estate is still going strong. People are still moving here. I mean, that's not stopping at all. The infrastructure downtown, I mean, I don't think the cranes have stopped once since all this is happening. So, while there are people are certainly scared and wondering about what the future looks like, I mean, there's a big part of Austin that's still moving forward with a ferocity, I think.
Definitely. And I think the interesting thing to observe and see what happens here is, there's going to be a lot of people that go out of business. A lot of the vulnerable people are the music venues, the restaurants, the staples, which were already, let's be honest, they were already starting to get the lights shut off. I mean, we've seen it over the last 4 or 5 years. Some of these institutions are going out of business.
Yeah, no doubt.
So after this hits, what of that is truly going to be left?
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be people. I think it's already started. I know it's already started because I just read about it somewhere yesterday, but there are going to be real estate people just jumping in, and we'll see what those people make of the city, because we'll see. But I still think there's, well, just whether it's everything moves to Kyle, or everything kind of finds new little, like, whatever, like what do you call them, speakeasies that nobody knows about. There'll be some little ravines that remain that keep the lifeblood of the creativity and all that stuff going strong.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was having a conversation with a friend the other night about that very thing, and we were saying, lamenting the fact that some of the places that we've come to know and love and even played at multiple times may not make it through, and that's just a harsh reality of what we're faced with right now. But like you said, that was already happening anyways, and that's tough for people who are sentimental and nostalgic, which folks who do what you and I do often are that way. Um, but with that said, and who knows, it remains to be seen. But I still think that if Austin places a value on its culture and especially its music scene, some of those places will go away, and it is a travesty that that's the case. But it the place just may rearrange. I mean, I have a feeling that a music venue goes away, another music venue comes in and takes its place. But yeah, it's a very, very, very strange time, and we're having to see some pretty heartbreaking things occur during all this.
Yeah, no doubt. So what were some of the projects you were involved with? Because obviously I'm familiar with Harvest Thieves, which is a fabulous project.
Yeah,
And but that's, you guys aren't that old. You've been around for I think what, 4 or 5 years? Is that
yeah,
about right?
it's just about 5 years. Yeah.
So
So.
what were the projects you were in before that?
The very first project I was in was a band called Guns of Navarone, is like the old movie,
Yeah.
and we were a band for about 3 or 4 years. Not too dissimilar from Harvest Thieves. I mean, I think musically it's in the same ballpark, but it was a little more lively and maybe more on the rock side than the country side. So, but yeah, we had a great time with that band. Just life changes brought that one to an end. We're all still good friends. Everything's fine, but just change of life stuff brings about that. And so Harvest Thieves was actually a side project. And when Guns of Navarone ceased to be, our guitarist Dustin and I, who he played in that band as well, we decided just to kind of make Harvest Thieves our main project. But I also played solo in town throughout that whole time as well. When I do so, I'm playing songs from either of those bands, and some of my own. But one of the things that got derailed this year was I was kind of hoping to put out a solo album of my own too, and get started on that. But again, that's something to look forward to in the future. So.
It was derailed by Corona. You weren't able to pursue that because of the
Yeah,
circumstances.
just kind of putting that, with finishing up this Harvest Thieves album and then dealing with work and then, kind of all the things we've talked about in the last 6 months, just, that just got shelved for another day, I think. And it's something that I've been thinking about doing for a long time. I've even talked to a group of musicians to help me put it together and, looking at studios to even go record the thing at. But I've shelved it for the moment. So.
Can always get back to it. We always got to shelf stuff, then
Yeah.
revisit. And then so Harvest Thieves kind of came together as a side project, and then took its place as the primary thing. And you're the guy who stands in the center of the stage. So I know Gibson, who's in your band, and I haven't seen you guys playing around, but I do think I know one or two of the people in your band by name. But are you, have you always been the guy who stands in the center, telling the story, the lead guy, so to speak, or have you found yourself as sidemen as well and stuff like that?
Well, with those two projects, I've been the guy in the middle telling the story,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been the primary songwriter for both of those. But here recently, one thing that I've really loved about Harvest Thieves is that Anna Facette, she's our keys player.
Mm-hmm.
She's also been bringing her songs to the table, and we've actually recorded a few of them that will be on this next album. We're really excited about that. So she's starting to take more of a hand in the songwriting role, and that's something that we were encouraging her to do, and so far it's been working out really well. And when we play a Harvest Thieves show, I'll sing a few songs, and then Anna will sing a few herself. So sometimes she's the lady in the middle of the stage. So
Yeah, I definitely remember that as well. And have you guys been practicing, or are you doing one of these kind of pass along the sounds without
Mm.
actually getting together?
Mostly the passing it along, but we have been fortunate enough to practice twice during this as a full band, and then we we still have our practice space. We've had it for years, so we will section off time here and there, and then whoever can make it will go up and we'll play together. So we're not trying to, put too much pressure on having full band practices, but more so just to get up there and stay in practice, whoever can make it. So
So, what does your writing process look like? I'm always interested, as someone who has been a practitioner of it for years. I've got my method, and my method has been in place for pretty much since the beginning because it works for me so well. But I'm always interested to hear what other people's are. Does the lyric comes first? Does the melody come first? Do you get yourself in a zone? Do you seclude yourself? How does it work for you?
uh, I think, I don't know. I think I'm with you. I think I've done what's worked for me for a long time, and usually that is I'll have an idea, whether it's a song title or a turn of phrase, um, or even just a riff that I've come up with that I like. I usually will take that one. It's kind of the seed to the song, and then I often build the song around that. The way that looks like mostly for me is I find a melody that I like first with whatever music that I've written. And, you know, I wouldn't call it plug and play lyrics, but I'll have an idea and say I have a theme, an idea of a theme that I want to write this song about. I'll already have a melody or the music down, and it kind of conveys an emotion to me. And then I think, well, that's what I want this song to sound like about this particular subject. And I always have a loose idea of the story I'm trying to convey, and then when it comes time to complete the song with lyrics, I usually have the song already written in its structure from start to finish, and the lyrics to me are usually the last thing that I do. So if the song sounds good to me and it's already just through pure musicality, uh, giving me a certain feeling or making me think a certain way, then I know half the work's already done. And then the lyrics are usually what I do last. But
Yeah, that's very similar. I'm sure there's nuances that
mm,
aren't quite the same, but that's extremely similar to my process in terms of the sound of the melody and the sound of the song kind of come. And just as you were talking it, and it's just struck me before, but it's such a one thing that's so strange about creativity within this medium is what, and it sounds like this sometimes happens to you and sometimes doesn't, but it sometimes happens to me and sometimes doesn't. But when you have the chords, and you start with a humming with it, right? And it starts to sound something really attractive to you. You're like, oh, I like the way this sounds. And then from there, I'll, oftentimes I definitely will not have any subject matter. But
mm,
from that, you keep leaning into the feel of that melody, and then from the lean into the feel, some sort of lyrical content grows out of it, whether it's a sentence or a phrase, and then a whole song with full fleshed out ideas and feelings and everything comes from that. It sounds like that kind of happens to you sometimes, and man, that's a strange thing. That's a strange
it
thing.
is a strange thing. And I always admire people. Like I said, I grew up as a Dylan fan. And he would sit there at the typewriter and just churn out reams of lyrics
Mm-hmm.
over and over again, and then have them ready, have them done, and then he would sit down and put the music to that. And you know, I've tried to do that, and it doesn't work for me. Um, there are poems that I've written, and it's really, I think every artist should mine every idea. Every idea should not be off the table. If you've written a line or a hook that doesn't work for a certain song, don't throw it away. Just put it aside, because you may come across something where you can use that again. And I've certainly done that. I mean, I've gone back to songs that I didn't find to completion, but maybe I got 75% of it done. That, well, I'm not going to use that song, but I can use that line, and I can use this, broad stroke idea in this song over here. And so I have found myself doing a lot of that, and that's been a useful tool for me. So, yeah, let me ask you this: do you make time every day to sit down and write, or are you more of I'll wait till I feel a new song coming on?
So with me, and I want to just get back to Dylan in a second after I answer your question. For me, it depends on where I am in the song. So if I'm like in the middle stages or the end stages, I can set aside time. Not like I do it every day, because it depends on what my schedule like is at that time. But I can say, all right, I need to finish this song. It's like I need to come up with a bridge for this song. Okay, that I can do pretty much any time. But the initial inspirational moment where that something comes where nothing existed before, that not always, but a lot of the time comes in like, okay, if in a couple months there's a 2-week pocket there I have, and this is those where I do most prolific initial writing packages, where it's like I'm gonna get my skills as hot as they can get, I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna sleep, I'm gonna read a bunch of books, and then I'm going to smoke a lot of weed, and I'm going to sit and write. And usually it takes like a week to really get into the center of the beast, where then once I'm in the center of it, I can, like, in 2 days write 5 songs that I like the most of that 2-year period, So there's something about going deep into yourself, for me, going deep into yourself, filling your system with as much, stimulation and growth, and then letting it pop. But other than that, I can chip away at a sculpture at any time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with Dylan's his own beast. It's like, I love Dylan. I've gone through like 3 different stages in life, starting probably when I was like in middle school. I mean, that's probably when I was first listening to Dylan. And I don't even think about that much, but I was definitely listening to my first Dylan in middle school, and then a revisit high school, revisit college, He's a beast, but he's maybe like Leonard Cohen, a couple other guys that just sit and type.
Yeah.
And that's why he had songs that were 8 minutes long. It's like, that doesn't even work anymore,
Yeah. And believe me, I'm not saying anyone should ever compare themselves to,
right. No, I know.
But, I here, for instance, like I'm a huge John Prine fan, and
Yeah, he's another guy.
Prine would take, you listen to John Prine songs, and to someone who's not a musician, they think, or a songwriter, they think, wow, this guy, he's really got a talent at like making it sound very simple and having these really these very useful turns of phrase, and he maximized feeling and emotion in a small amount of words. Well, John Prine worked really hard to make what sounds simple, not be hard. Like, he worked really, really hard to make it sound like that. So he didn't just write down, and I mean, I'm sure there were multiple times where his cleverness and wit got him through the end of a song, but he took what was very hard to do and made it sound very simple. And I think there's a special gift to that. And that's why he didn't write 8-minute long songs either. So
yeah, no, I that's always been my particular striving for the best I can be within simplicity. I just love simplicity. I think someone who loves country, someone like me who's, loves blues, those roots musics, and I'm a big Metallica fan too. I love Metallica, but I'm always about the simplicity, and that is not easy. Simplicity is not easy. It can come easily at times, but for the most part, it's hard to get it sounding cool or deep when it's that simple,
Yeah, he was very mindful about all that. He realized the value in that, and so yeah, I think that's very important to keep in mind when writing. Is I heard it was actually a Dylan saying, and I feel like I'm talking about Dylan too much, but he said he said every line fight for its place in the song, and I don't know, that always struck me as important. So even if it's by my own guidelines, I try to abide by that rule. So
Yeah, Dylan's funny, man. He's a funny dude. He's an odd duck, and I love him.
yeah.
But so just to kind of round things out here, Corey, what I'm asking this of everybody because I'm very interested to know what people think. And with all this time that we've had just time to let things bounce around, absorb things. You can. First, I'm interested to know what you have, logistically planned for yourself, other than the Harvest Thieves stuff you mentioned, album coming out soon. But for the community, not just in Austin, which we have a, bird's eye view of, we're in it, but also how that transcends to the greater music community and industry as a whole. Any thoughts you have on where it goes from here? But kind of starting with where you're going from here, and then where the rest of us and as a industry are going as well.
Yeah. Well, I think what's happening here in Austin that we're seeing, you and I touched on it, places closing down and a seemingly shrinking pool to swim in. That's not just happening in Austin. That's happening all over the place. And so we're not the only ones who are forced with facing that down. And so I think without emptying into a broader topic here, I think that we're living through a time that is not only inconvenient, but is very raw and I don't know, very uncomfortable and awkward, and needs to be approached with some mindfulness on many different fronts. And so I think one thing that we will be able to look at here is simply logistically, what does it look like to be a musician? I mean, obviously, a great portion of our time and effort goes towards playing in front of people and bringing community together. The venue, your bandmates, the people who've come to see you. That's a great big part of what we do. And when that goes away, we see, how big a part that was for us. But, we're going to have to figure out ways to share our music with each other and get inventive with that. And I think we've all seen some examples of people doing that. Like I was even saying, people releasing their albums during this time. Most of it's all online, and then people have gotten really inventive about having shows and being spaced out, doing drive-in stuff. And I mean, I think all that's really neat. I think it's just all forcing us to take a strong look at how we make this industry move forward. And, I don't know what the answer is in many ways that doesn't involve the bottom line. I mean, and if venues aren't going to be there, it's because their bottom line was either too hard to reach, or there was an unfortunate circumstance where they couldn't reach it. And so I think, if we are going to give support to certain aspects of our society, we really need to fight for our place in society too, as musicians and any kind of creative artist, really. I mean, we need the capital to continue doing what we're doing. And if that's not there, then it's going to be increasingly more difficult. So I don't know if that means being political about holding people's feet to the fire about wherever that money and support goes, or if it's more of a grassroots thing where enough people talking and walking the walk can handle some of that stuff too. But we're in a difficult time right now. It's very strange to me to see some of the things that are going on right now. And I like to think that people like you and I don't take it for granted, but this time has shown us that some of that stuff can just go away. And once it's gone, it's very hard to get that back. So we need to be very mindful of that.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's certainly unprecedented. The music industry obviously was it had this kind of, long, steady arc. And then it was obviously peaking like in the 90s. That's what we hear, is that the CD era was when it was at its biggest, but it's been a behemoth even recently. It's definitely a 1% or 0.0001% industry. And a lot of people like us working hard, having fun, and a lot of people, in between or below. But now it's all bets are off, and I think, I don't think there's going to be a choice but to have it be a grassroots thing, because, and I want to kind of bounce this back to you, because it's another topic I'm interested in. And, the Save the Stages campaign and whatnot. And I don't want to see anyone lose their job. I don't want to see anyone lose their business. But I think there's something to be considered, for lack of a better term, of, is it better to just live to fight another day? Because, I mean, there is no end in sight. So, I mean, basically, if you're doing it, let's just, take an example and kind of streamline it. If you're setting up some kind of program where you're going to, quote, save the stages, I think most of that really is you're taking taxpayers' money and putting it into real rich people's hands, who are the landowners. And there's no end in sight of when this is going to end. So are we just keeping things on lifeline when there's no hope of, resuscitation, so to speak? I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of this. I'm trying to gather as much information with compassion as I can, but I don't know. The Save the Stages thing seems a bit, I don't know. It doesn't seem logistically practical, to be honest, to me. I don't know, but that's just me.
Well, you may be right. I'm with you. I don't have the answer. And specifically with Save the Stages, I would say, to me, all of this boils down to prioritization. I mean, are we going to prioritize our arts? Are we going to make sure that those avenues of expression are going to be around for, however long we need them to be? And are we going to, and when I say that, and I'm not shirking your question, I definitely, I would say this about Save Our Stages. At least there is an effort towards that. And now,
right, I agree 100%.
I wouldn't be able to speak on all the particulars, but I think I understand what you're saying. But there's just going to have to be a prioritization of our society that allows us to make sure that we hold those things in high esteem and regard, and that we're going to move forward with those things being a part of our culture, a fabric of our everyday life. I mean, I think if you took just a general poll in Austin and said live music is going to be reduced by 80%, I don't think anybody would be happy about that at all. I think everybody would express concern over that, if not complete anger, and would want to do anything within their power to make that work. So again, I'm with you. I'm not sure I know what the answers are, but I think, like I said earlier, I touched on the bottom line is what moves, what moves the ball down the field when we're talking about things like this. And you know what? That's unfortunate in so many ways, because I think you and I, and maybe some of our peers, we don't like thinking about the bottom line. We don't like thinking about the financial aspects to some of these things that we do. But that seems to be the lifeline connection that I see from point A to point B. So,
yeah. And I just, I think it goes without saying, but I don't want to see any of these venues go out of business. I don't want to see anyone lose their jobs at all. I just think in this situation, we have to be, as individuals and as a community, we have to be as clever as possible. You know what I mean? We have to be, and maybe we can get some safe stages, and in 6 months we'll be back to normal. I think that would be great. But the bottom, are people going to come out in even close to the same numbers, and are they just going to go out of business because people don't come out in 8 months or whatever? We just have to be open to, okay, if the government doesn't step in and save our stages, if that doesn't happen, well, what are we going to, let's figure something out. You know what I mean? We got to be clever, all of us, because otherwise, we'll just get run over by the tide. But I think we will be, because there's always going to be entrepreneurial people who love music. There's always going to be musicians, and there's always going to be people that want to hear the music. So as long as you get those three working together, you can't stop it. You know, you can't
Yeah,
stop
I mean, you know, we may just have to reframe the conversation. We may have to look back at things that we took for granted or had gotten used to, and just have to realize that, you know, either they're not going to be that way for the foreseeable future, or they're gone altogether. And that might be a part of what we're looking at. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I think the impetus is there to get back to some sense of normalcy, which is great. I don't know. It's just you hate to see these venues close and see musicians move away from Austin, because it almost feels in a silly way like you're giving up ground. And once that ground was given up, you're not going to be able to get it back. And I think that's what is so unsettling to everyone who has a stake in this or has a care about it. So
that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I think that's idea has kind of been, you know, maybe bouncing in the back of my brain but you're exactly right. People don't want to give up ground. And why should they want, you know, this is what makes Austin so cool, period. This is what it's built on. This is its lifeblood. And yeah, if that ground is given up, is it just condos and tech? Is that all that's left? So that's a very good point for sure.
Yeah. I think that.
Well, Corey, this has been really good. I really enjoyed this conversation with you.
Yeah, Sam, I got to tell you, man, I've talked about this a lot with some of my friends, but maybe not even in this amount of depth. So I really appreciate you having me on. And man, I know Harvest Thieves has played with you several times, so I really hope one day we can do that again.
Me too, brother. Me too. And I appreciate you engaging with me and indulging me as well. And I wish you the best of luck, dude. I'll see you on the flip side.
Same to you, man. You have a good day.
You too, buddy.
Yeah.